What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to another Heart Over Height episode. Today, we're going to be switching things up from basketball and talking about a little bit of football, as football is right around the corner with new kickoff season. So if you do enjoy this content, do me a huge favor, smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, comment down below on what your favorite NFL team is. Let's have a discussion on where you think they can go in the playoffs. And so without further ado, let's get into this ranking system. So as you can see here, we have Super Bowl favorites, Super Bowl contenders, playoff contenders, missing playoff teams, mediocre at best, and teams that are dog water. We are going to be mixing things up, talking about each individual team here, and just giving my opinion on the roster upcoming year. So let's start at the bottom. Let's work our way to the top. We're going to throw in some teams here and there. So first dog water team is the Oakland Raiders. The Oakland Raiders don't have an answer at quarterback this year. They were looking to draft quarterback, but of course, too many quarterbacks were taken early, and their future is not clear. They, of course, have bright spots in Devontae Adams and Mad Max Crosby, but overall, the roster's pretty poor. They just need talent. Josh Jacobs moved on to his next team. This team needs talent overall. So yeah, that's our first dog water team. Next up here, another dog water team that we're going to be discussing is the Carolina Panthers. They are a team that they just need to kind of figure things out, as in, is Bryce Young the answer? You traded a lot for him, smaller frame build quarterback. Does he have the capability and skill to be the guy on, your quarterback that's leading your franchise? And the answer is, possibly. It seems like he needs some help around him for sure. He's getting murdered out there with defensive lines pretty much just walking their way right to the quarterback. There's not a whole lot of protection around him. And he doesn't really have great weapons to throw to. Adam Thielen, injury-prone guy that's on, older in age. Jonathan Mingo, there's not too much excitement over there for him to be airing it out to kind of thing. Next up here, we do have the New York Giants being another dog water team. They are a team that is just, although they were on Hard Knocks and showcased a lot, they lost Saquon Barkley, one of their best stars on the roster, of course. I think the bright spot on this roster is the fact that they drafted Malik Neighbors. He's going to be a great receiver in the NFL. With the Giants, though, I think they have a huge problem at quarterback, of course. I'm not a huge fan of Daniel Jones. I don't think he's a solid starting QB in the NFL. I think that if he is, then he needs a ton of help around him, and that's just something that he does not have right now, especially with Darren Waller retiring. Of course, you have a rookie receiver as your number one option. There's not a whole lot. Your running back is brand new to this offense. So overall, I'm not a huge fan of this construction. The defense too, they traded for Brian Burns, so that's an up and coming defense. But as far as the offensive side of the ball, you got to be able to score. They can't score. Last team that is in the dog water category is the New England Patriots. I think that this one's pretty clear. This might be the worst team in football. Drake May doesn't look great. They don't have weapons for him, of course. Offensive line is mediocre. The defense, they just traded one of their best defensive players in Matthew Judon. Now, a bright spot. I've been giving a bright spot for all these rosters. And the bright spot is Christian Gonzalez, the corner for New England. He's a phenomenal corner. Yes, he's coming off injury, so he's going to need some time to come back to full strength and everything like that. But what I can say is this roster has nothing else going on. This roster's terrible. And Drake May, I said it. I've got a lot of NFL fans around me and everything that I talk football with all the time, and I said he was going to be the bust. I like the other quarterbacks drafted around him. Not a huge fan of J.J. McCarthy. I'll get into that, of course, but he's in a better system and better opportunity. Same with Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams. Those guys have weapons around them that they can at least throw the ball to. Drake May has nothing, and he's going to struggle. There's going to be a lot of struggle here. The one bright spot, too, for Drake May is there's not too much quarterback competition. Bailey Zappi? He's not going to compete. So Next up is our next tier here, and this is mediocre at best. So this is 5 teams that I have here that are just kind of eh. Well, let's start with the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos could move up, theoretically. The defense is atrocious, but the offense actually doesn't look too bad. You have Javonte Williams coming back from injury. You have Bo Nix, who looks actually pretty solid. Looks like he's filling that mold of a young Drew Brees. And that's exactly what Sean Payton wanted. You have receivers out there, and you have Mims over there and Cortland Sutton, guys that you can throw the ball to, i.e. what I was discussing about Drake May. Bo Nix has a good situation on offense. The problem is just the defense is terrible. He gave up 70 points last year to the Dolphins. Yes, the Dolphins being one of the best offenses in football, but of course, 70 points is what we're talking about. That's absurd. So, they're mediocre at best because they are so lopsided. That defense is atrocious. Next up here, I have the Tennessee Titans. They're a team that they're trying to figure out what is Will Levis. Is he, similar to Bryce Young, is he a possible franchise guy? You got Tony Pollard, there for the run game and everything. Of course, you lost out on Derrick Henry now, him now being a Baltimore Raven. But the defense isn't terrible. They're definitely a rough team to play. They're going to beat you up. In NBA terms, they're similar to like the Miami Heat, where they may be low in ranking, but no one wants to see them on a regular season game because they play smash mouth football. And having a guy like Will Levis can help that for sure, because he's got a cannon to his arm. He can air it out. If one of these receivers pops for them and plays decently well, gets Will Levis an opportunity to get him the ball, then we could be seeing a different side of Will Levis. They also have Malik Willis as a backup. I don't really think that, he was one of those guys I could have seen as a sleeper pick, as in like when he was drafted. Could have saw him growing into something similar to like a Jalen Hurts, where he was drafted in a later round, but then took the starting role and flourished a little bit. That was what I was hoping for him out of college, but of course it hasn't transitioned into that, and it doesn't seem like he's going to pan out to that. Next up here on mediocre at best, I do have the Indianapolis Colts. That is a team that I think a lot of people have higher than I do. I think that they're not great. One, Anthony Richardson is reminding me a lot of like Cam Newton, where big, strong quarterback that he's going to get injured because he's not taking hits well. He's going to get injured here and there. So it's like, all right, man, like you need to learn how to slide. Yes, he's a big, physical, athletic quarterback. I like that a lot about him, his frame and everything. But as far as quarterback skills, I don't know if he is a starting quarterback in today's NFL. And that isn't saying anything against him. I just need to see the injuries not happen. I need to see it for a season or two where he doesn't get injured and he's not out for a season. The weapons, too, not my favorite. Of course, they have Jonathan Taylor, who's coming back from injury or another year off of injury. They've got decent receivers over there. And then I do really like the rookie that they drafted in the first round, Latu or something, Latu or something like that. Linebacker for them. I like him a lot. I think he'll be very solid for them. Next up here on the mediocre list, I do have the Arizona Cardinals. I question Kyler Murray. I think we all question Kyler Murray on his want to win. And, the guy doesn't watch film. They, of course, went and drafted Marvin Harrison Jr., which is a fantastic pick. You can't go wrong there. I think that he'll be a phenomenal receiver in the league. Obviously, his dad was a huge, phenomenal Hall of Fame player. But for him specifically and the Cardinals, I don't see them really doing much, especially in the division that they play in when they have to play, a tough defense in the Niners twice a year. They have to play a tough defense in, the Rams defense is decent, and then a tough defense in the Seahawks defense. So, that's 6 games out of your season. That 6 games is huge difference. All right, next up here, the last team of mediocre at best is the New Orleans Saints. They're such a tough team to judge because they had the weakest schedule last year, and they finished 9-8 or 8-9, and they don't look great. Slant Thomas, his age is showing. Derek Carr, of course, injury. He's had some injuries in his past and everything like that. The defense doesn't. Defense is all right. Overall, though, it's just mediocre. That's the best way I can put it. They could be a team that definitely makes the playoffs because of the division that they play in and everything like that. I just see them as needing more depth and talent on this roster. All right, so we're going to move on to the next category. This is the teams that are missing the playoffs, but I wouldn't be surprised if they end up making the playoffs. So we're going to start off with a team that they had an injury at quarterback. That's the Vikings. I think because of that injury and everything, Sam Darnold is a decent quarterback in the NFL, of course, but I don't think that he is going to propel them into the playoffs, especially in the division that they play in. When you have to play teams like the Packers twice a year, that's going to be tough and going to be rough. And you have to play the Bears twice a year, again, going to be rough. Like, it's stuff like that. That's the other teams around them. It's not that they're necessarily bad. They've got all the offense in the world, for sure. Justin Jefferson, they got Hawkinson over there, Aaron Jones, etc. But they have an offensive coach, of course, and Sam Darnold can probably flourish in that roster. But, you have to play against those other teams that are just significantly better, not only at the quarterback position, but on the defensive side of the ball too. Next up here, we do have the Cleveland Browns. I just question the quarterback play over there, of course, Deshaun Watson, as well as Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston is the kind of quarterback, because I assume at some point in this year, if things start off pretty rough, Deshaun's going to get benched. Deshaun Watson is going to get benched for Jameis Winston. Everyone loves Jameis. The locker room is sold on him. They love him. He's he's a guy who's not afraid to make mistakes. He is not afraid to throw for 5,000 yards and have a ton of picks attached to that. And kudos to him. Now, the Cleveland Browns, besides quarterback, have everything that you look for in a Super Bowl contending team. And if Deshaun Watson goes to a portion of what he used to be, this is a Super Bowl contending team. I'm just ranking them here as missing the playoffs because I don't believe and trust in the roster itself. Next up here, we're going to be talking about the number 1 overall pick in the draft. It is the Chicago Bears. I think that they're about a year away. I think that they need to develop, I think Caleb Williams needs to develop a year in the NFL, as well as, I think he's got all the talent in the world around him, as in you have Roman Dunze, you have Keenan Allen over there, you have, all those. DJ Moore just got locked down to a big contract. You've got a 6'8" tight end. The defense is pretty good, actually. So I wouldn't be surprised if these guys make the playoffs. I just think because rookie quarterback, another, a rookie receiver as well, they might just be a year away. They have a defensive head coach. I am more someone who am looking for an offensive head coach when it comes to quarterback play to help thrive and succeed. So I would say it wouldn't surprise me if they did something like the Texans where they make the playoffs in C.J. Stroud's rookie year, but they are a team that I wouldn't be surprised, especially the division they play in, if they didn't make the playoffs their first season with everyone. This one might surprise a lot of people, but next up I do have the Dallas Cowboys missing the playoffs. I don't like their offseason at all. They had a lot of holes to fill. They didn't do much. There's all this drama there about Dak's new contract, CeeDee Lamb's new contract, Micah Parsons' new contract. And I think that the Dallas Cowboys should move off of Dak. He can't play when the offensive line is not spectacular. When the run game isn't good, he is not good. And when he doesn't have great receivers. And if CeeDee Lamb continues to hold out and he's not playing for them, I assume the contract's going to get done with CeeDee Lamb. I assume the contract's going to get done with Micah Parsons. And I assume, whether or not, I would say if I was the Dallas Cowboys, I'm ready to move off of Dak. And then you go, and this year's draft, to be frank, I think the guy that fits the Dallas Cowboy is former Dallas Cowboy son in Deion Sanders, and you go get Shedeur Sanders. I think that he fits the the fame, the glory that is the Dallas Cowboys, and he could be your quarterback of the future. Dak just being too mediocre and needing too much around him to be successful, i.e., like, he would be a fantastic quarterback if he played on the Niners, but because he plays on the Dallas Cowboys here with no help around him, he's going to be rough. He's not going to look good. That's my prediction. That's a bold prediction, I would say. Wouldn't be shocked, of course, if they made the playoffs. I just don't see it. Next up here, missing the playoffs is going to be the Steelers. Always going to have a phenomenal defense. The quarterback play is a huge question, and there's not too much helping them on the receivers. We've seen George Pickens possibly being on the market. They, of course, traded away a guy like Chase Claypool last year. Deontay Johnson might be on the market. Najee Harris not performing to the level we expected. TJ Warren there as a backup that, is he that guy kind of thing? Do they have legit offensive weapons? And then you have a guy that played for the Broncos and Russell Wilson that lost the locker room right off the bat. Doesn't, to me, fit the culture of Pittsburgh Steelers football. And then you have Justin Fields, who I'm actually hyped for Justin Fields. I'm excited to see what he can do, with the Steelers and I think he needed a new change of pace from Chicago. I think he just had too much hate in Chicago. Can he play quarterback? It is going to be something interesting. I've got a theory on how Justin Fields could be successful, and I might create a video about it, but basically I see a possibility of an offense where they run two quarterbacks, as in like a lot of wildcat formations and everything like that, where similar to like the Saints, how the Saints kind of dabbled with it a little bit with Drew Brees and Taysom Hill, where Drew Brees would be on the field and throw like a lateral pass to Taysom Hill, who would then launch it down the field kind of thing. I could see that with something like the Steelers here, where they get a little creative and you put Justin Fields almost at like a running back position, and him and Russell Wilson almost take turns throwing the ball, because you always have to try and like adapt and be that team that tries something else that will work, i.e. the Dolphins, for example, with all sorts of motions and everything, getting their opportunity to have their receiver be at full speed by the time the ball is snapped. That offense is so timely that by the time that ball is snapped, Tyreek Hill's at a full sprint so that he can get down so quick, and the corners don't have too much time to react. And one false move, boom, touchdown. I can see something similar where you mess around with the quarterback play a little bit with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. So next up here, I do have the Seattle Seahawks, just being a team that misses the playoffs because they have some, the offense looks on paper somewhat decent. Kenneth Walker, running back, DK Metcalf, and Jackson Smith and Jigba, Geno Smith, and then you have a possible Sam Howell in the background, who didn't play poorly for the Commanders, but he showed some flashes here and there. The defensive side of the ball definitely needs to be repaired a little bit, as they had a few injuries on that side of the ball, but there's definitely some bright spots, and if that defense comes together, this could be a dangerous team that knocks out one of these playoff contenders into missing the playoffs. The Falcons are my next team here. They're someone that they needed a linebacker pretty badly. They ended up trading for Matthew Judon, and I really like that for them. A lot of people were giving them a lot of crap for drafting Michael Penix. I think that he's going to be a very solid quarterback, especially if he gets a year to mentor behind Kirk Cousins. Kirk is just going to help him just learn the game better and learn it at a quicker rate and everything like that. And then, of course, Kirk Cousins, who you paid a lot of money for, just came off an ACL injury. So if things are going south, you have a backup quarterback ready to go. Michael Penix is a little older, a little more mature than some of these other younger QBs that were drafted. You took a chance on him. He's also a left-handed quarterback. Last left-handed quarterback that, that came in as a rookie for the Falcons was Michael Vick. So if he can be a glimpse of Michael Vick, I'm not saying he's exactly Michael Vick or anything like that. I'm saying that if if he can go out and ball out, that would be phenomenal for them because they would have two options there, of course. You have Kirk Cousins, you got Michael Penix, and then you can start focusing. You've got your quarterback selected and solid. You can start focusing on the positions needed. Next up here, another team that will be missing the playoffs, in my opinion, is going to be the Commanders. The Commanders, so most likely either the Commanders or the Cowboys will make the playoffs just because of the two coming out of the NFC East there. But the Commanders, I think, have the better shot over the Cowboys because Jaden Daniels, I think, is legit. I think that he is going to be one of the top two quarterbacks out of this draft class, as in, like, him and Caleb. They're going to be – I think Caleb Williams is phenomenal. I think he'll be a very good quarterback and everything. There's just a lot of pressure there. Jaden Daniels, there's not a whole lot of pressure over there. Now, his problem and why I didn't put them in the playoff contending spot specifically first was because the offensive line is pretty rough over there. You've got a ton of weapons over there. You got multiple running backs that you can deal with. Brian Robinson's still there. You have Terry McLaurin that's, going to be a fantastic wideout for you to throw to. The defense is pretty solid over there as well. But the offensive line needs a lot of help. It needs a lot of work and everything like that. So next up here, this team wouldn't surprise me if they made the playoffs, but I think the Jets are a team that does miss the playoffs. I don't know if I trust it. I don't know if I trust Aaron Rodgers coming off of his leg injury, coming back and being back to Aaron Rodgers with no, wiggle room for growth. I think that it might be, one of those things that we just look back on and it was the Jets' failed experiment kind of thing. I think that they got great receiver, a good receiver and, over there in Garrett Wilson, as well as the defense is pretty solid. It's actually probably one of the top defenses in the NFL, but overall that quarterback position. And I also question Breece Hall with his injury history. Can he stay healthy for a year? That's a huge thing. If he does, he could be one of the top backs in the league just because of the threats downfield that Aaron Rodgers is going to be play action all the time. So it's going to open up a lot for Breece Hall running the ball. Next up here on missing playoff teams, I do have the Jacksonville Jaguars. I question Trevor Lawrence and his capabilities in this league. I think that he's gotten a lot of criticism, so I could see it as a bounce-back season for him. They went and picked up Gabe Davis as well. That's pretty intriguing to me. Him being a deep threat can let Trevor Lawrence kind of just air it out, and I think that Trevor needs a bounce-back season, like an explosive season, because he's been getting written off quite a bit. And the defense is not as great as it once was. So next up here, we have the Buccaneers. Buccaneers probably will make the playoffs, but whenever Baker Mayfield starts to have expectations, he fails. So by getting re-signed by the Buccaneers and everything like that, you got Mike Evans over there. You got Chris Godwin, possibly. You have, you have weapons around you. You've got everything you need. People are going to start trusting you, especially since you had success last season. And we've seen it kind of time after time where he has a little bit of success and then the expectations are up here and then he falls off a little bit. And then he moves over to a new team, i.e. the Rams, has a little bit of success, expectations start, he falls off a cliff. Same thing, Buccaneers. Will that continue? If it does, they're going to miss the playoffs. All right, we're going to move on to playoff contenders, starting with the Philadelphia Eagles. Although they lost Jason Kelce, one of the best offensive linemen in the game, they are still going to be very solid. The defense is not great, but I think that the front seven is going to be very helpful for them. The corners and the safeties is what you question, of course, with Philly. Offensively, they just grabbed Jahan Dotson from the Commanders. You have A.J. Brown. You have Devontae Smith. They've got pieces over there that Jalen Hurts can throw to. We might not see the tush push be as successful as it was last year, but I still think that there's a possibility here that they make the playoffs. I think they got a good, solid roster to make the playoffs. Next up, the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay Packers, I think, are playoff contenders. They put on a show last year, and I think they got better by adding Josh Jacobs. This roster is good on both sides of the ball. I think we're going to see next steps from, Reed as well as Christian Watson, helping them with their receivers and everything. But Jordan Love, I think, is a pretty solid quarterback. And Green Bay knows how to pick their quarterback for sure. Going from Brett Favre to Rodgers to Jordan Love is pretty phenomenal, if you ask me. Next up here, we have the Chargers. Chargers are a playoff contender, I think, because, one, the division that you play in, you face the Raiders twice a year and you face the Broncos twice a year. So you're playing two bad defenses twice a year. Of course, you play the Chiefs, but, the Chiefs, they're going to be one of those top dogs, of course. But you got a new coach, Jim Harbaugh. He's going to work he's going to be able to work on that run game for the Chargers in order to open up the passing lanes for Justin Herbert to air it out downfield. That's the big thing. You look at how J.J. McCarthy was successful in Michigan. He barely threw the ball downfield. He was Blake Corum, doing his work at running back and everything like that, or he had these good receivers outside. Now, that's one thing, too, that does scare me about the Chargers is the receiving corps is pretty weak. But Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh should be able to work together in a way to where they can get those guys the ball and help them create great open looks. I also don't think Quentin Johnson will have just as bad as a year as he did last year. If not, if he does, he's gone. There's no way. Next up here, I do have the Detroit Lions, and I considered putting the Detroit Lions in Super Bowl contender. I really did. I like the offensive line. It's phenomenal, probably the best in football. Jared Goff is a really good quarterback in this system. You've got players on the offensive side of the ball that can help score points. And then the defense is really good. Overall, there's not a whole lot to complain about, but I think they just don't have, on the offensive side of the ball, to me, they don't have that, dynamic, game-changing player. As in, the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes as well as Travis Kelce. I don't know if Jared Goff is that game-changing quarterback that is that dude kind of guy. He's somebody that he's good, but also went to a Super Bowl and put up 3 points against the Patriots. Not disregarding him at all, but I just think that they need a weapon or two there that can help them flourish. And Amon-Ra St. Brown is fantastic. He's a great number one receiver. But if you only have one player like that, like I said, the Chiefs, they always elevate those other players too, but they have Travis Kelce that they can always trust throwing the ball. He's going to get the ball no matter what. And they have a dynamic quarterback in Patrick Mahomes. The Lions have Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jared Goff. I just don't know if that's enough. I think Amon-Ra is a number one. He can be that dynamic player on the, for your wideout. I just don't know, is Sam Laporta that other guy? Is he superstar caliber? That's the thing. We're talking the difference in stars and superstars. That's the difference between Super Bowl contender and Super Bowl favorite. And playoff contender. So next up here, I do have the Buffalo Bills. I think it's a huge knock to them. They lost Stephon Diggs. They don't have Gabe Davis. Keon Coleman, the rookie, looks phenomenal. But Josh Allen just doesn't look the same as he once did when they played the Chiefs and it was a shootout, 35-32 kind of game. He doesn't look the same. He's seeming like he just needs a ton of help over there. The run game, James Cook looks pretty solid as your number one running back and everything. Josh Allen, of course, being your number one running back. I don't know. The defense doesn't really look fantastic anymore. They just look like similar to how I described the Bucks this year in basketball. All the other teams seem to be getting better around them except for them. The Chiefs went and said, hey, what do we need? We need a dynamic playmaker that can he's a high fly, just super fast dude that can run a 4.2. So they go and draft Xavier Worthy. The Bills do draft Keon Coleman, which I like, but I think you had a lot of holes on this defensive side of the ball too when you do play those insane Super Bowl favorite contenders, which I'm about to get to. Next up here, I do have the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins are a playoff team, in my opinion, of course, because you play in a division where you play the Patriots twice a year. You play the Bills twice a year. Tua struggles in cold weather, and so you're playing the Jets, the Bills, and the Patriots possibly in that cold weather. Of course, though, I do still think that the Dolphins have started working on that and saying, hey, we suck in cold weather. So we need to be able to combat against that. And I think that if they didn't believe that they could figure out a way to still win games in the cold, they wouldn't, with Tua, then I don't think they would have re-signed Tua. They gave him that massive contract and everything like that. I think that genuinely they believe in him. And they are going to figure out a way. They just got to get creative. And that is something that the Dolphins have been really good at, is getting creative. They've got all the weapons in the world. Achane, Mostert, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. Like, you've got it all. Every piece that Tua needs is there. The defense should be better now that Jalen Phillips will be back. I like that a lot with Bradley Chubb. Pairing the two of them together is phenomenal. And I'm glad that Jalen Phillips will have a chance, because that dude, he's been hit with the injury bug way too many times. All right, we're getting down to the last few teams here. Let's talk about the Bengals. Bengals are a playoff contender. Joe Burrow, he'll be healthy and back. Of course, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins are still there. That contract is going to get done. T. Higgins, whether he's on the roster long term, we're not sure. But I think that this roster, they've got it. I don't think losing Joe Mixon was that detrimental to you, because you do have Joe Burrow at quarterback. But it is something that if they miss the playoffs, it wouldn't necessarily shock me, because, they're not as good as they're good. They're really good. Don't get me wrong, but they just might not have been as good as they were last year. Of course, they just had to deal with injury. Next up here, we have the Rams. The Rams are an interesting team because they could be either really good or really bad kind of thing. I just think that they're going to be decent. They're going to be a good team that Matthew Stafford is a great quarterback in the league. He is not afraid to air that ball out. He talks about on a podcast how when he was in high school, he was able to air that thing out 70 yards down the field. Now he said he can throw it about 60, which is still phenomenal. 60 yards downfield is insane. And then they've got players. They've got Cooper Kupp. They've got Puka Nacua. It seems like they always find a way to just find dynamic offensive players that change the game. They're not necessarily the most athletic or the best on the field, but they just make the best plays. Very smart players. Next up here, I do have the Houston Texans. Houston, I think that they're super close to being that Super Bowl contending team. They picked up Joe Mixon. They traded for Stephon Diggs. They've got Nico Collins. They've got Tank Dell over there. Of course, your quarterback is C.J. Stroud. Will Anderson on the defensive side of the ball. They've got almost everything. I think the defense still needs a little bit of help. I would like to see a little bit of help on that secondary for them. But they're very close to being Super Bowl contenders. They're a few pieces away, for sure. So speaking of Super Bowl contenders, we're going to move on to the Super Bowl contenders and talk about the Niners. And the only thing, the big thing is, of course, the Brandon Ayuk drama. Where is he going to play this upcoming season? Will it be with San Fran? Is it possibly the Steelers? Is it the Commanders that have gotten back into the mix? Stuff like that. I know that there was a deal in place to send him to New England. Now, that seems like the place where careers are going to go to die, because there's not too much going on in New England right now. But the Niners, they've got all the weapons in the world, even without Ayuk. You got Debo, Kittle, McCaffrey. You have playmakers here. So I also just don't love Brock Purdy as a quarterback. I don't see him as some phenomenal quarterback that's a game changer. Jimmy Garoppolo was successful in this system. Brock Purdy, successful in this system. In the preseason, you see Josh Dobbs, Pasternak, successful in this system. I understand that's just preseason, but my point is the system doesn't need a phenomenal quarterback. Like I was talking about with Dak Prescott would be phenomenal for the Niners because he's got all the weapons in the world. He's got Trent Williams, who's a freaking brick wall. No one's getting through him, blocking for him. A good offensive line, solid defense, great weapons. There's not too much more you could ask for. Fantastic fullback, even better running back. Like, what else do you want? I could play quarterback for the Niners and be successful, and I would be dog shit in the NFL. So the last team that is the Super Bowl contenders is the Baltimore Ravens. I only put one team as the Super Bowl favorites, but if there were two, it would be the Ravens. Picking up Derrick Henry. The run game for Baltimore, they may never need to pass the ball because you have Lamar Jackson and you have Derrick Henry, the best running quarterback and one of the best running backs in the league. I won't say the best, but in his prime, he might have been the best running back in the league. Then you even have a good receiver in Zay Flowers. The defense is always solid. Like, there's not too much more you can ask for here, too. You got a tight end, Mark Andrews. Like, everything's looking great for them. The problem is, in the playoffs this last season, they got away from what they did really good, which was run the ball. They didn't really run the ball at all in the second half, and it got away from them to where they went away and they tried to play a game that just wasn't theirs. And last but not least, Super Bowl favorites, I think, is the Kansas City Chiefs. They have to be the favorite until they lose. As in, you can't, like, last season would have been the season that they lose because the roster was at its weakest point, and they still won it, and they got better. They got Xavier Worthy. On the defensive side of the ball, Chris Jones is now the best defensive tackle in football because Aaron Donald retired. Like, they, of course, have Travis Kelce. They have Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes can make anyone a good receiver. He made Scantling a good receiver, and that guy was dropping balls left and right. I mean, they literally are going out and just, I don't know. I think that you can't pick anyone else except for them. I would love to pick another roster because I'm all about other teams winning the Super Bowl and all that. So, like, I would love it if the Texans flourished and they win it this year. The Ravens win it this year. I'm a Dolphins fan. The Dolphins win it this year. You know, that'd be phenomenal. But you got to get through the Chiefs before you talk about winning the Super Bowl. So, until then, they are going to be the Super Bowl favorite. All right, guys. Well, I know this was kind of a longer video, and I appreciate it if you stuck around for all this. Leave a comment down below what you agree with, what you disagree with. All right, it's been another Heart Over Height episode, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.